In this episode, we're going to be covering the basics of 3D modeling to set up your scenes. Let's check it out. Okay guys, welcome to this week's episode. My name is Jose Vega. I'm a concept artist at outofjosevega.com, and in this channel I like to share with you guys my tips and tricks for Photoshop in digital painting. Now this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Autodesk Maya, and I'm going to be showing you guys the very basic things that I use inside Maya to start setting up your scenes. So let's check it out. Alright guys, so let's dive into Maya real quick here. So I don't want to go into too much detail about the UI, user interface in Maya, because I don't really think you need to know too much about Maya to get advantage of the modeling tools and what you can use to help you set up your basic mesh for your concepts. So I'm just gonna go over a couple of things and then show you how I use it. So the first thing that I want to say is this is usually how Maya starts, or something like this, where you have a four grid here, and these are your viewports. So I'm gonna start very basic. So I'm gonna be assuming that this is your first time using Maya, and you can see here these are your 4 viewports that you have basic. You have the top view here, you have a front, side, and perspective, and the perspective is just, you can move around and zoom in and all that. Now to navigate on your viewports, like I'm doing here, I'm pressing my Alt key on my keyboard, and that allows me to bring the controls on my mouse to navigate here. So I can use my left click button on my mouse to rotate like this, or I'm using my right click to zoom in and out, and then my middle mouse click or button to pan my camera. All right, so let's say I have an object here. Let's just make a little cube here real quick, and I'm pressing my Alt key and using my left click to rotate, my right click to zoom in, and then my middle mouse button to pan the camera. Now that's the basic on navigation here. Now if I wanted to if I'm modeling here on my perspective and I wanted to zoom in to here, have a larger viewport, I can just drag these things here, left and right, or top and bottom, and I can edit this however I want to, or I can just press spacebar on my keyboard on top of my viewport that I want to concentrate on, and then that brings my whole that viewport as just one thing, so that way I can just concentrate and have a larger and see things a little bit better. So to go back, I just press spacebar again, and I'm back to the setup. You can also do that here on the left here. You have these options here for different types of setups for your viewports, and the first 2 are just the basics that I show you. So if you press the first one, there's like a big viewport here, and then on this one you have the regular 4. All right, now here on the right hand side, you're gonna see that it says layer here, and this is how you're gonna control your layers, and layers are super useful, just like in Photoshop. So if you press layers here, you can create an empty layer, and then you have it right there. V is for visibility, so you will have the things that are on that layer visible on your scene. Let's just say I have a sphere here, and let's just make a cylinder real quick here, and I want to add the sphere onto that layer. I'm going to select it, right click here on the layer, and then I selected objects. Now if I click the V, it's going to disappear, right? And then if I press again, I'm going to see it. Now the second option here, when I click it, it says template, or it's T for template. You're going to see that it's very visible, but you can see a little bit of the wireframe of the mesh of the object there. You can see it very, very faintly there. That's just for using for reference, or if you want to have it there. And then if you click again, it's for R for reference. Now there you can still have it on the scene, but then you cannot really click on it or select it. So sometimes in a scene you have things that are already set up that you don't really want to move or click by mistake or something like that. This is a good way to separate those things, and then you can work on your scene. Like if I have this on top here and I want to select just a cylinder, not the sphere, I can have it on reference, and then I can click and drag, and I'm just selecting there. All right. If I want to take that, I just click again here, and then it comes back to normal. Right? Now, if I want to empty the layer, I can empty the layer. Now, there's nothing on that layer, so if I change the visibility, there's nothing on that layer, so you don't see any change. I can just delete the layer, and then I'm back to normal. All right? But that's just a very simple things about layering, and pretty much what I use the most. So the next thing is shelving. Now, your shelves are gonna be situated here on this top portion here. And you can see already that you're gonna have already some by default, like surfaces, polygons, and all this. And these are the most common things that a lot of people, or by default, you're gonna have in these shelves. But what I like to do is I like to create my own, because as you can see here, it has my name, and I like to have things that I'm always gonna be using in my process, have them available here, because that way I don't have to spend a couple seconds extra to go to the different menus and find the tools and use them, and then go back again and find the tools. And even though I'm just saving maybe 2 seconds or 3 seconds while I look at it, you know, throughout a couple hours of work, you're gonna be saving a lot of time. And I just like having things available for me, like on one click. So this is gonna depend on what you're gonna be using, so I suggest that you just play around with it, and the things that you know that you're gonna be using, just add them to it. And the way to do that is, first of all, how to create your own shelving here. So if you go here to the left here, drop down menu, just put new shelf. I'm gonna delete this one because I don't need it. And let's create a new one. So new shelf, you're gonna put a name. Let's just put hosted 2. And that's going to create an empty shelf right there at the end. Now, to add things here, let's say, for example, if you go here to polygons, now you're going to see here that I have a tube, a cylinders, a cube, and a sphere here. You can also access these things by create polygons, because we're in the polygon section. And then you're going to see here these different options as well. So you're going to find that you're going to do one thing in a couple different ways. And that's okay. So you're gonna have to find and figure out what's the best way for you to work during your process. So let's just say I want to add, let's go to my new shelf here, and I want to add a couple, basic shape polygons here. So let's say I want to add a cube to my shelving. So what I'm gonna do is press Control Shift on my keyboard, and then click on what I want to add, and then you're gonna see here that it added it already to the shelving here. Let's say I want to add a plane and a sphere. So now I have these 3 things here on my shelving, that instead of going to create polygon, look for it, and then click on it and then do it, I can just click here, click and drag, and that's it. Okay, so it just saves me a lot of time, and it just has things for me very, very easily. And I have a bunch of things here, like I said, but all these things you can find, whether it's on the mesh, drop down menu here, or edit mesh, normals, or anything around. So what I want to go next is that you're going to see here that this drop down menu has different options here: animation, polygon, surfaces, and so on. Now, depending on what you have here selected, it's going to change your top menu here. So right now we're on polygons, but if I change it to animation, you're going to see that it changes some of the options that you're going to be able to do for animation here. Or if you go to surfaces, then that's going to change, or dynamics and all that. But in reality, I only need polygons for what I want to do. And I always keep it in polygons and just keep it like this, because I really don't need the rest for what I use it for. Just to keep it very, very, very basic. Okay, and let's say so now that let's say you started working on your shelving here, and you have a couple of things here. Let's go through some of these so you guys know how you can use them for. I'm going to concentrate on one view here. Let's say I want to create a box. Okay, now since we're working in polygons, we're going to go through a couple of things that the polygons are the characteristics of a polygon here. So if I right click and hold it, I'm gonna get this menu here, and you're gonna see this rounded menu here. And I want to concentrate on object mode, edge, vertex, and face. So object mode is just the polygon as a whole. That's a cube right now. Right? If I had a sphere, there would be a sphere. But if I go to edges here and I'm right clicking, you're gonna see that I'm able to select the edges here. Now you're gonna see that once I have something selected in my scene, you're gonna get these arrows and this pivot, and that's the transform tool for me to be able to either move things or rotate or scale them. Now right now is on moving, so you can access those here on the left as well. You're gonna see that the moving tool is selected. We also have rotate and scaling. And you're gonna see that the graphic actually changes, so it's easier for you to know which one is available. And I really don't like coming here and select this, so I use my WER on keys on my keyboard. So W will be for moving, E will be for rotating, and R for scaling. Okay, so I always use my keyboard as much as I can. Right. So right now I'm on edge subselection tool here, and I can move around the edges and play around with them however I want to. If I go to vertices, I can select the vertices, which is the point where those edges meet, and I can do the same thing, either move them, rotate them, or scale them. Scale them, it's not gonna do really anything, or rotating. It's more for moving. And the other one will be faces, which is pretty much the polygons. The polygons is just the faces here of this cube here. And if I press Shift, as I'm selecting, I can select multiple things. Right? So if I was on vertices, I can select multiple vertices or edges or objects as a whole, and then I can do whatever I need to do. So if I press Shift, I can select multiple things. So let's go back to object mode. Now here you're gonna notice that I only have just a couple of faces here. I have one on the top, one on each side, one front and back, and one on the bottom. So this is really low, and it's not gonna really let me do too much in terms of changing the geometry of this. So if I go here on my right, I'm gonna have these options here. So on the polycube. Polycube is the name of this cube that I created. And you're gonna see this here, the subdivisions. Now subdivisions is how many, or what I like to see, how many cuts I'm gonna have on the object here. So if I go width, and let's say instead of 1 I have 3, you're gonna see that I added 2 cuts or 3 faces into that direction. If I do the same thing for heights, let's just put 2 here. Now it's gonna be cut in half, so I'm gonna have 2 portions in the height axis, and the depth is gonna be the same thing but on the other side. So let's just add here to here. Oops, not that. Let's just add 2 here. Right. So now I have more vertices, I have more edges, and I have more faces that I can play around with and model whatever it is that I need to model. Right. So you can add things there. Now, if you didn't add them here, you can do them in other ways as well. So for example, I have here one of my things, the split selected edge ring. And what that does is you can access that in the edit mesh menu tool. You're gonna see that it turned my edges blue instead of green. Now if I click this edge, it's gonna split all my faces or edges in that direction. So I can place this ring, this cut ring here, and then that's gonna add all those edges there. Or if I select this edge going this direction, it's gonna do the same thing but in the other direction here. So it goes all the way around here like that. Or if I press this one, it's gonna cut it perpendicular to the edge that I selected. So if this edge is going up and down, it's gonna do my cut left and right like that. Okay. Now this is a very useful tool. I use that a lot. And another one is this one, which is pretty similar, the cut face using a plane. And what that does is I'm gonna go back to my regular viewports here, and I'm gonna go to the side. So say I want to do like a diagonal cut going this way like this, and I cannot really do that with my with my previous tool, the split selected. So with this one, I can draw a plane or line here. Let's just go back to the object mode here. Select my tool, and now I can draw this line here, and then that line is gonna do a cut on my geometry all the way, like that. And now I have that in there like this. Now if I go back to my edge, split edge, now I can do something similar, and I can add things. It's gonna change the way it behaves because of that cut that I made, right? So let me go back, object mode, and those are some of the tools that I use. I also use, for example, if you go to mesh here, combine and separate. That means that if I have another object here, let's say I have a sphere here, combine pretty much helps me combine these two objects that are separate. So if I wanted to change the vertices on both at the same time, I cannot do that. I have to do it separately because they're two separate objects. But if I combine them, I'm going to select both of them, just combine. Now it's the same object here. Now if I go to vertices, now I can select the vertices on both objects and just, do whatever I want on them. This is also very useful. If I don't want them combined, I can just go back to separate, and then they're back to being separate objects. And from here, mirror geometry is also very useful as well. So let's say I have let's make another cube here, more simple. Right? Now let's say I want to select this edge here, and let's just bring it down like this. Now I'm gonna cut a little bit here. Actually, I'm gonna go back, and I'm gonna do the cut first using my edge ring here like this. And now I'm gonna select this edge, bring it down, and let's say I want to select this face here and just give it a little bit more room here. Got this very simple ramp like this, right? So let's say I want the same ramp but on the opposite direction, so like a skateboarding type of ramp. So it goes up, straight, and then down again. And I want to have the same dimensions as this one. So what I can do is I can go to Mesh, Mirror Geometry, and I'm going to click this box on the right, which means that that option here has options that you can change, and it's going to behave a little bit different. So if I look here at my pivot here for the transform tool, I have the green, I have the red, and then I have the blue. You cannot see the color blue, but you're gonna see here on the rotation tool. Now the green one stands for the y-axis, the red is for the x, and then the green, the blue one is for the z-axis. Okay. Now since I want the ramp on this opposite side like this, I'm gonna go on the c-axis, which is pointing on that direction. So plus z, and it's gonna go apply. I'm not gonna merge it. So if I press plus C, apply, and then it's gonna do the same thing. It's gonna mirror my geometry on that direction. All right. If I were to do it on the opposite direction, let's say negative z, is gonna do it on this side, like so. Okay. So, but I just want to have the plus C option here. All right. Now I have now one object. Now when I do the mirror geometry, since I didn't merge them, there's gonna be two separate objects, and the way I know that is because I'm gonna separate these two objects, and you're gonna see that it's one object here and then another object here. So I need to merge this so I don't have that space in between. What I can do is just combine them, and I'm just gonna use my options here on the shelf. This is a lot faster, and I'm gonna go to vertices. If I zoom in here and I click here on this vertex and I move it, you're gonna see that there's another vertex on the same spot. That sometimes could bring some trouble. So what I'm gonna do, I want to merge those vertices so they become one, and I'm gonna do the same thing all the way around. So I'm gonna use the merge vertex tool, vertex tool. You can find it on the edit mesh. I use that a lot, so I have it here on my shelving. and I'm just gonna select those two, merge vertices, select these two, merge vertices. Now, when you're in your viewport here, if you press 4 on your keyboard, you're gonna see wireframe mode, wireframe display mode on, so you can see through objects. If you press, for example, 5, then you get the shaded version. All right, so sometimes you need to see through objects to kind of select some things, and that will help you with that. So I'm gonna press 4. I'm gonna go to my vertices here, and I'm gonna select this one on the back, and I'm gonna merge them. I'm gonna do the same thing with these two, merge them. And now I'm gonna press 5 to see the shaded version. If I go to object mode and move this vertice, there's only one there. So that's merged already, so it's not gonna give me any future problems. Okay, now I think that's about it, really. So the thing here is that you want to use simple shapes, and well, at least at first you want to use simple shapes to kind of set up your scene, and I mean, you could go really crazy with your modeling, but it's just gonna take you longer. So sometimes at first, it's very easier or more efficient to just use simple objects like this, and just kind of edit them a little bit to kind of get what you want on your scene, right? And I'm thinking that when I'm looking at this through my camera here, I'm thinking this is my canvas, so I could place things in the way that I want the image to look like. And let's say, this could be, for example, a rock, for example, and I could place that here, and this is gonna be my ground. And let's say I could move this way, go back to my top view here, kind of move that and edit it in a way that could help me. This could be like a big rock on the background, something like that. Then I can duplicate that, for example. So as you can see, I'm not really worried about what's happening outside my viewport here. I'm not really worried what's happening there, because it really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna be using that as in my advantage to kind of make sure that I situate my objects in a way that is gonna help me set up my scene the best way. So let's just say, this could be, so I have a very graphic composition here, right? And this could be like the ground, this could be like big rocks, and this could be like a hill in the back, and then the sky on the background, or mountains or something. This could be like rocks, and I could keep going and going, and little by little start building smaller rocks and smaller details, and stuff like that. So you don't really need to know a lot of the more complex things in modeling to create simple scenes like that. And for example, I could get a screenshot out of this, a print screen even, and import that into Photoshop and use that as my guide to do my painting. And the cool thing about this, I have a camera, so I can rotate it a little bit like this if this shot works better, or a shot like this, for example, works better, or more of a sky aerial type of shot, maybe like this. So you can play around with different shots very easily, get those screenshots, and then play around with those shots and see what works best. So that's why I think this learning your basic 3D is very powerful for setting up your scenes. So let me show you a couple examples of how I do it in some examples, and get back with you in a minute. So you're gonna see here that I'm building a couple of objects here, and you can see that I have a model there, and I'm using the human model just as a reference for the scale of the things that I'm building. What I'm basically doing here is I'm building a library of assets for a project, and this is gonna help me have consistency on the design and have things that I can repeat throughout the whole environment, which is gonna help me in the long run to do things a little bit more efficient. So things like railings and different walls designs and things that I know are gonna be repeated throughout the whole environment. It's gonna help me to have that library. And the concept is pretty similar to building up your library of custom shapes or brushes, that it might take some time in the beginning, but then in the long run it's gonna help you be a little bit faster and more efficient with your designs. So that's exactly what I'm gonna be doing here. Alright, so I'm gonna let you guys watch this and I'll be back in a second. Now here I'm gonna be building an actual scene, and I'm not gonna be using anything different from what I showed you guys on this video. I'm still using simple shapes. Now the only difference that you're gonna see here is that I'm gonna be importing some things that I already had made, that I already had before, like the rocks and some grounds effects and stuff. And again, that's one of the good things of building your library, because then you can bring them to other pieces, and then you can reuse them and help you with your designs. So that's pretty much the only difference that you're gonna see here. But I'm pretty much using everything that I show you guys. Very simple shapes and adding more subdivisions and edit them, the different vertices and angles and all that. And I'm not really worried about what's happening outside my viewport, because what's on the viewport is what I'm thinking is the actual canvas. So everything that's outside of that really doesn't matter at this point. Alright guys, that's it for this week's episode. We really cover just a little bit of what Maya is and how we can use the very basic things in Maya to already use it in our advantage to set up our paintings or our scenes. Now if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below so I can actually address them in future videos or in the comment section below. And if you like the content, feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you guys on the next one.